And in this video, I'm going to show you how to unblock, unclog, unjam your 3D printers. Now, I have Ender 6 with full enclosure and a Spider version 3 hotend, but I'm also going to show you how to do it in standard. And to be honest, the same steps going to apply to around 90% of 3D printers out there. So let's start with the right tools for the right job. On the left hand side, you're going to have the must-haves, which you just have to have. On the right hand side, the okay to haves, or something which is going to make job easier. And so from the left hand side, a couple of Allen keys to unscrew those bolts. Next, we're gonna have some of the needles which are purpose built for nozzle unclogging. It's for the smallest of clogs, if in case there is a flow, but you know, it's not too big. You could kind of use that as a first call of action. Next, we're gonna have this wrench, which is a must-have. Invest in something like that. Perfectly sized for the standard nozzles, so you can replace the nozzles very quickly. You can also use, which I have next listed, which is a normal wrench. Smaller to, let's say, undo the locking mechanisms for, let's say, Bowden tubes, and the bigger one is the nozzle wrench. Next, we have pliers. Let's say working with a very hot nozzle, you kind of need something to protect your fingers and hands. Then you have snips to simply snip the different material if needed be, a brush, a brass end to quickly scuff the actual filament off the nozzle, and lastly is a scraper to simply scrape the filament if needed be. So let's dive right into it. First step is to expose the hotend. So take off the fan screws or unclip the fan, however your 3D printer is made up. I like to put my fan on a frame so it doesn't get in the way. That's why we're trying to do this. Then take off anything protective. Now be careful because some parts can be very hot depending if your printer is actually heated. So what we're going to do next is we're going to try to flush the filament out of the nozzle. We're going to boost the heat as much as possible, as much as your printer allows, and see if that actually flushes it on its own. Depending on what material you use, you might adjust the temperature, but for PLA, let's say 240 is more than enough to clean it inside out.
You can see it's going to start bubbling, which is going to force all that material out of the Creality. But what I'm going to try to do as a manual and quick unclog is really to go to settings. We have refuel option of sorts and just force 2 centimeters of material to be fed immediately to see if that helps. Kind of oozes it out, which tells me that the nozzle itself is pretty okay. But I'm still gonna show you what to do even if it's not okay. What tells me that I still have work to do is that I'm feeding more and more material, like another 2 centimeters at the highest, and it's still clicking. It cannot go through, so there's still a jam we need to figure out. And so what we're going to do next is really take one of the tiny needles.
So this task is sometimes very annoying because you need to find that little hole and actually try to get that tiny needle through it. Once you get in, all you need to do is really go up and down in different sizes just to see if the actual nozzle needs some tweaking, or is there something deeper, like in this case there's resistance up above, and sometimes that's all it needs to be done. It's just gonna flow. In this case though, I know that I need to take off the nozzle and investigate further, so I'm gonna use my wrench and just undo the nozzle. And remember, this is running very hot, so you need to be very careful or speedy to actually undo it because the heat transfers. Now we can try saving that nozzle for later, or you can just replace it. I tend to just replace with a clean one because they clog up as well. But really the issue is going to be up above. As you can see in this specific hotend, it's definitely to do where the Bowden tube meets the nozzle. So what you want to do is really take out the safety pin and take the wrench I showed you before with a smaller end and just push it down on the connective bit. That should allow you to pull the Bowden tube together with the filament and do the cold pull, boom. And as you can see, the actual end, I don't know if the camera does it justice, is a bit wonky. We're gonna snip that off and just gonna test out if it flows. So I'm gonna go back to the printer settings of the software and just adjust a few millimeters and see if it actually pushes. As you can see, it's all good, it flows. And so here I rule out immediately that it's something with the tubing or how the filament is being fed into the hotend. It's really the hotend issue. This is no surprise and super common as well. So what I'm going to do next, really, because that hot end is exposed tube right now, is take something like an Allen key, which is just a bit smaller than the actual hot end. And I'm going to use the pliers and just try to push. And as you can see, there is a slight bit of material on the end of the actual Allen key. Be careful not to damage the actual hot end. I mean, it's all metal, it's not, you know, a big issue, but gently push it through. You really just want to see if there's any big blockage inside. And all the steps so far apply to the standard hot ends. All you need to do is really deattach the connective bit with a wrench. After you have disconnected the Bowden tube, you take it out. Of course, all of it is connected to the actual frame and is probably pretty hot. You wouldn't do it with your fingers. But in the tunnel, you can view from the top and see if there's any obstructions. You can use the Bowden tube itself on a standard one to push through any debris, any blockages really quickly. And that should do the trick. And while things are still warm and hot, I'm gonna take a fresh nozzle or the old nozzle, it depends how you wanna do this. If it's clean enough, I'm gonna reattach it really quickly. And then I would advise you to pull out some material into the tube itself, manually or with the software, but so that the Bowden tube freshly would touch the hot end and the nozzle. As you can see, I just pulled it out a bit and I'm gonna insert it. If you had a standard hot end, you would want to reattach the connective bit and then push everything through. You can find other videos on that, but once that's done, you can basically try testing things out. Don't forget to reattach the actual fan so it cools the hot end in the right spots before the filament reaches the nozzle, so you don't jam it before you actually fixed it. Now, a little naughty thing, but I like to reattach just one screw before I tested things out. I want it to be in place, but I don't really need it to be solid just yet, just in case we missed a step or something is wrong. And now, if you haven't already, put the temperature of your 3D printer to the normal printing temperature, and let's test this.
Boom, it books. And as you can see, this is a good flow, no clicks, everything is running smoothly, and it's almost hitting the hot bed, which is a mess right now.